It wasn't until the moment I froze to death in the snow on New Year's Eve that I finally realized. My parents faked their deaths, the debt collectors were paid actors, and my uncle stole our house. The blood money I worked 13 years for went entirely to buying my little brother a house for his wedding. Now that I've been reborn, the very first thing I'm going to do is cancel my registration, freeze the bank cards, sell off the house, everything you owe me, I'm making you pay it all back, with interest. Chin Shi, wake up. Something terrible has happened to your family. I was violently shaken awake, an urgent voice ringing in my ears. I groggily opened my eyes, only to see the man shaking me. It was my uncle. How can you still be sleeping? Your parents and your little brother were in a car crash, they're dead. Seeing my drowsy state, my uncle was absolutely furious. Hearing this, I was taken aback. I quickly rushed over to the mirror, stared at my own face, and muttered to myself. Dead again, huh? That's right, I had time traveled. I was currently 18 years old. On this exact day in my past life, my biological parents racked up over $1 million in debt and faked their deaths to get away, taking my little brother with them. As an 18-year-old, I was cornered in my own home by a gang of debt collectors, forcing me to pay up. I tried to call the cops, but the collectors beat me to it and called the police themselves. When the police arrived, they got a rough idea of the situation. And then they told me, a son paying his father's debts is just how the world works. Then they warned the collectors to collect the debt legally, avoid harassing the neighbors, and not to kill anyone before leaving. Pushed to the brink with no other options, I planned to list our family home for sale to clear the debt. But when those collectors dragged me to their designated real estate agency, the agent took one look at my property deed and called it a fake. He even said my family's house had already been transferred to my uncle's name. On New Year's Eve, I knelt right outside my uncle's door, begging him to give the house back to me. My aunt stormed out and slapped me right across the face. A son pays his father's debts, that's just common sense. We have zero obligation to help your family pay off anything. After spitting those words out, she slammed the door shut. Inside, there was cheerful laughter, and the TV was playing Uncle Benshin's comedy sketch. Outside, the snow was falling heavily. I braved the blizzard and went back to the house that was no longer mine. On the second day of the Lunar New Year that year, I was forced onto a ship by the debt collectors, starting my life of deep-sea fishing to pay off the debt. Every trip out to sea took at least 6 months, sometimes a whole year. I never even knew how much I made per trip, because the captain handed every single penny straight to the collectors. I was young and completely broke, making me an easy target for the other crew members to bully. Back then, driven by the belief that I had to clear my father's debt, I worked on that ship like my life depended on it. Gradually, I turned into nothing but a numb fishing machine, working 17 hours a day, sleeping for 6, and using the remaining 1 hour just to eat, wash up, and use the bathroom. I did this for 13 solid years. For 13 years, I never once stepped off the ship. Whenever the fishing boat returned to port to unload, I was simply dragged onto another boat to head straight back out to sea. When I was 30, the night before New Year's Eve, the ship docked, and suddenly, I missed home so much it hurt. When the captain wasn't looking, I quietly slipped ashore, sneaked out of the port, and headed home. Working at sea year after year, barely getting enough to eat, left my joints completely messed up. My neck and lower back were both ruined to varying degrees. So, when I dragged my battered, sick body back to the home I hadn't seen in 13 years, I was completely shocked to see my parents and younger brother, who I thought had passed away long ago, along with a whole bunch of relatives, all happily celebrating together. Even though a newer comedian was playing on the TV instead of the usual classics. My sudden appearance caught everyone completely off guard. Why aren't you out there fishing? What the hell are you doing back here? My dad spat, clearly annoyed to see me. Don't come inside. You reek of dead fish. My mom shrieked, pinching her nose and glaring at me in disgust. Hey bro, go find a bathhouse, wash off, and change your clothes before you come back. My little brother chimed in, casually dipping a slice of beef into the hot pot. I could hear the dripping sarcasm in his voice. Right then, my uncle stood up, marched over, and shoved me straight out the door without a single word, slamming it heavily in my face. I just stood there for a long time, completely stunned and lost. I dug through all my pockets, but I didn't have a single penny on me. I had walked the entire 50 kilometers from the port all the way home. By now, the soles of my shoes were worn right through with massive holes. Watching the snow falling all around me, I quietly crept over to the windowsill and sat down. Inside, the cheerful sounds of everyone drinking and bragging drifted out. A warm world I clearly didn't belong to. Qin Shaolian, what were you even thinking back then? Faking your own death, claiming you owed millions in debt, and getting a bunch of friends to act like loan sharks. Transferring the house to Qin Shaoshen, and forcing Qin Shi out to sea to catch fish. You even made me dress up as a cop to scare the poor kid. A voice drifted through the window. I instantly recognized it. It was the fake cop from the debt collectors all those years ago. It was all because that little brat Qin Shi was too damn stubborn. He always had to compete with his brother, Qin Chuan, over everything. When Qin Chuan took drawing classes, he bought textbooks to teach himself. When Qin Chuan entered that art competition, he secretly signed up too. And in the end, Qin Chuan only got a participation award, while he walked away with first prize and got early admission to the art academy. If he hadn't entered that damn contest, that early admission spot would have gone to our Qin Chuan. Then Qin Chuan wouldn't have had to settle for a private art school, my mom eagerly explained to the guy. My dad immediately backed her up. Brothers shouldn't be fighting over everything. If we didn't put him in his place, he would have walked all over us by the time we got old. It just so happened I knew a fishing captain back then who was short on crew. We figured Qin Shi was old enough anyway. First off, it would break his rebellious spirit, and secondly, it got him a paying job, so we did a little scheming and came up with this brilliant plan. Thank God I have so many friends willing to pitch in and help out. And look how great things turned out. Now Qin Shi has a nice, stable job, doesn't he? I heard fishing pays really well, right? The fake cop asked curiously. My dad chuckled the moment he heard that. It's alright, brings in about 200,000 a year. Anyway, the captain transfers all of Qin Shi's paychecks directly to me. You don't leave any for the kid? Who cares about him? Shouldn't his wages from working out at sea go straight to us? Besides, we gave birth to him and raised him. Didn't that cost money? It works out perfectly. Qin Chuan's private art school is so expensive, so his older brother's income can help take the load off the family. Plus, his younger brother is getting married soon. The house, the bride price, the wedding jewelry, all of that takes money. It's only natural for him to chip in and help out. Right then, my mother chimed in. It's the new year, don't talk about that jinx. It's bad luck. What kind of son skips the New Year's fishing trip and sneaks back home to celebrate instead? One look and you know he's an ungrateful, unfilial brat. Just then, Qin Chuan's voice echoed from inside. Mom, Dad, everyone, it's the new year. Let me toast you all with tea instead of wine. Here's wishing everyone that in the new year, all your dreams come true, and our whole family stays happy and healthy. Hearing that, it finally hit me. Everything was a lie. When they love a child, he can do no wrong. But when they hate a child, even breathing is a crime. My entire reason for existing was just to pave the way for Qin Chuan. I forced myself to stand up. Braving the heavy blizzard, I stumbled out of the neighborhood and onto the streets. Freezing, starving, and completely broken inside, I didn't make it very far before collapsing into a snowbank by the side of the road. The moment the midnight bells chimed, firecrackers blasted away the old year, and brilliant fireworks welcomed the new. Staring up at the fireworks exploding over the city, I suddenly felt a burning heat spreading all over my body. I knew it was just a hallucination, and feeling this kind of false warmth meant I was already knocking on death's door. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed in my ear. Well, you really are here. I slowly opened my eyes. Sure enough, it was Qin Chuan, staring down at me with a sickening sneer. Why are you here? Mom and Dad were wondering why you hadn't come back inside. I told them I'd go out and look for you. Are you going to take me home? Hey, you're still so naive. Not a chance, my dear big brother. Qin Chuan suddenly burst out laughing. He leaned in close to my ear and whispered, sometimes, a dead man is a lot more useful than a living one. I'll just head back and tell them I looked everywhere but couldn't find you. I'll say you probably headed back to your boat. Filled with endless, burning hatred, I finally closed my eyes. I died, but I didn't go to heaven, and I didn't go to hell. My spirit just drifted through the living world. The next day, my body was discovered. My parents rushed to the scene and sobbed over my frozen body. Meanwhile, Qin Chuan stood off to the side, recording a video to post online. Within moments, the internet exploded in outrage. Right after the holidays, my parents used that online outrage to sue the relevant authorities in court. It didn't take long for the court to arrange a settlement hearing. In the end, the authorities paid out a settlement of 200,000 yuan. Just like that, they had all the money they needed for Qin Chuan's wedding. At the wedding banquet, my parents and Qin Chuan couldn't stop smiling. Qin Chuan looked incredibly smug, and my parents were grinning from ear to ear. And all those relatives and former creditors drank and celebrated without a care in the world. Watching all of this unfold, I swore a blood oath, if I ever got a second chance, I would tear every single one of them apart. Maybe my pure, unadulterated hatred terrified the heavens, because the universe actually gave me a chance to be reborn. Seeing my seemingly crazed state, my uncle shot me a look of pure disgust, then yelled at the top of his lungs. Qin Shi, your parents and your little brother are dead. Since you've delivered yourself right to my doorstep, don't blame me for playing dirty. Thinking this, I slowly turned to face my uncle. My intense glare clearly gave him the creeps, but he desperately tried to keep his cool. Are you deaf, boy? I said your parents and your brother are dead. That was the third time my uncle had hammered home the news of their deaths. I stepped right up to him, held out my hand, and demanded, "Hand it over." My uncle was totally caught off guard by my reaction. "Hand what over?" "Their death certificates," I replied, my voice dead calm. "What death certificates? You need a death certificate when someone dies. Otherwise, how did you get them cremated?" I stated it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Your parents and your brother died in a horrific car crash out of town." I know, you don't need to keep shouting it, but unless they died overseas, any death in this country requires a legal death certificate. I held my ground, not backing down an inch. My stubbornness was clearly starting to piss him off. "What is wrong with you, boy? Your parents and your brother have already been cremated. There are no death certificates." "Which crematorium handled it?" "The crematorium over in Sioux City. And they just cremated them without a death certificate? The bodies couldn't be preserved, so they just cremated them immediately." My uncle snapped back, clearly losing his patience. Hearing that, I calmly pulled out my phone and started punching in a number. Seeing how unnervingly calm I was, my uncle started to panic. Why the hell is this little brat so calm today? It's like he's a totally different person. Despite his internal panic, he tried to sound tough. "Qin Shi, who exactly are you calling?" I didn't even bat an eye. "The civil complaints hotline for Sioux City." He froze. That was the last answer he expected. "Why the hell are you calling the complaints line?" "To report the crematorium, obviously. Illegally cremating bodies without a valid death certificate is a massive crime." "Uncle, I really have to thank you for giving me this information. Now, every single person at that crematorium, from top to bottom, is going straight to jail. Plus, they'll have to pay me for emotional distress. I'm thinking at least 1 million. Tell you what, uncle, once I get the settlement money, I'll even cut you in for 200,000. My uncle was absolutely terrified by this. In a total panic, he violently grabbed my wrist. I looked at him, feigning complete innocence. "Uncle, what are you doing? What they did is a serious felony. If people can just be cremated without a death certificate, then we wouldn't have murder cases anymore, only missing persons." My uncle was totally cornered, left completely speechless by my words. It took him a long time to finally stammer out, Now don't get so worked up. It's never a good idea to just go making official complaints. Let me call them first and ask what's going on." My uncle stepped out of my house and immediately got on the phone. Any idiot could guess he was on the phone with my dad. My reaction completely caught them off guard, so they were busy plotting their next move. I glanced at the time. In my past life, the mob of debt collectors showed up at my door in about 20 minutes. I grabbed an empty sports drink bottle and filled it up with some liquid. Then, I dug out the rubbing alcohol we kept around the house. Finally, I went into the bathroom and made a phone call while brushing my teeth. I was such a complete idiot in my past life. I had just finished brushing my teeth when someone started pounding on the front door like they were trying to tear it down. I stood right behind the door holding my 2 bottles, waiting a good while until those jerks got tired of knocking. I unscrewed the cap off the sports drink bottle and popped open the little ventilation hatch on the security door. The moment the mob saw the hatch open, they were just about to shout when I splashed a whole bottle of yellow liquid right through the gap. It splattered all over them. In a flash, I slammed the little hatch shut. The whole group froze in their tracks, staring at each other in absolute disbelief. Didn't Qin Shaolian say his kid was a pushover? Why does this psycho act like a total lunatic? What the hell did he just throw at us? Holy crap, it's piss. What? My mouth was open. Ah, bleg, bleg, bleg. Listening to the absolute chaos outside the door, I muttered under my breath, idiots. I rushed over to the window, threw it open, grabbed the bottle of rubbing alcohol, and dumped the entire thing right out the window. The overwhelming stench of alcohol outside was so intense it literally burned my eyes. A few moments later, they started hammering on the front door again. I filled up a basin with water and stood right back by the door. Just like before, I flipped open the hatch, chucked the water out, and slammed it shut in one smooth, seamless motion. By now, the mob outside was completely drenched like a bunch of drowned rats. Some of them totally lost their minds and started screaming curses at the top of their lungs. Quite a few of the neighbors had opened their doors by now, poking their heads out to see what the hell was going on. As those guys kept shouting obscenities, I figured the timing was perfect and started yelling at the top of my lungs. Listen here, smashing my door won't do you any good. I am not opening it. I'm calling the cops. The guys outside practically laughed when they heard that. Chin Shaolian was right. This idiot's son really only knew how to say, I'm calling the cops. We already called the cops. They'll be here any second. Open the damn door, a chubby middle-aged guy bellowed back. Bullshit, I've been watching through the peephole the whole time. Aside from banging on the door and screaming like maniacs, not a single one of you has even touched a phone. How exactly did you call the cops? With telepathy? We did call them. Just wait until the police get here, then you'll see. Nope, I am absolutely not opening this door until the police arrive. I stood my ground behind the door in a total standoff, leaving the whole mob completely helpless against me. At that point, a few of the braver neighbors started wandering over, asking the guys what was actually going on. The mob had clearly rehearsed this. They spun a hugely exaggerated story about exactly how much money my family supposedly owed them. But of course, they conveniently left out the name of the actual borrower. They just claimed my family took the money and was now refusing to open the door. Hey, keep throwing your little tantrum. The bigger the mess, the better. I sneered to myself as I whipped out my phone and dropped a massive bomb of gossip in the neighborhood group chat. Hey guys, someone's splashing piss all over the hallway in front of apartment 101 in building 28. Take a detour if you're walking by. Once the message blew up in the group chat, a massive crowd of neighbors swarmed in from every corner of the apartment complex. A few nosy people from the complex next door even showed up to watch the drama. Before long, a huge crowd had gathered right outside my door. The group outside split up. Most of them started explaining what had just happened to the gathering crowd of onlookers, while a few stayed by the door, shouting and arguing with me through it. About 10 minutes later, that so-called cop finally made his grand entrance. Looking through the peephole, I had to admit, his uniform looked incredibly real. I started to doubt myself for a second. Was he an actual cop, or just a fake? Right then, the cop started banging on my door. Police, open the door and cooperate with our investigation. I opened the inner door, staring right at him through the metal screen. Seeing the door open, he immediately put on this super serious, stern face. Open the gate and cooperate with me. Now, no way. If you want to talk, we talk like this. Sir, if you refuse to cooperate, I will be forced to issue a verbal summons right here and now. I just stared at him blankly and gave a flat, oh. The cop and the crowd outside waited in silence, expecting me to say something else. But I didn't say another word. Seeing that he wasn't going to speak either, I made a move to shut the door. The cop panicked when he saw the door closing and quickly stopped me. Hold on, you are now suspected of obstructing official police business. By law, I am officially summoning you. Yeah? Well, I'm still not opening the door. So, what are you gonna do about it? By now, the neighbors watching in the hallway were buzzing with whispers. The nerve of this guy. He is way too arrogant. Officer, don't play nice with him. Just call a locksmith. Pry that door right open, storm in there, and arrest him. Scum like him should be locked away for life. How can he act so entitled when he owes money? Hearing the crowd riled up, the cop's face turned totally pale, while I was absolutely loving every second of it. I've actually got a few locksmiths saved in my phone. How about I give them a call and get someone out here for you? Sir, I really suggest you don't blow this out of proportion. At this point, the cop and I were practically pressed against the door. I lowered my voice so only he could hear me. Blow it out of proportion? I want this to explode. How else am I gonna absolutely ruin you? And it won't just be you going down. Your little friends out there are going down right alongside you. The cop's eyes went wide. He stared at me with this wild, confused look, clearly trying to figure out what the hell I meant. That is, until several real police cruisers rolled right into the neighborhood. Suddenly, his confusion turned into pure panic. When the neighbors saw a whole squad of real officers arrive, a few nosy ones practically jumped at the chance to lead them up. The officers pushed their way through the massive crowd and stepped up to the door. They took one look at the fake cop standing there, and then looked through the gate at me. One of the older officers spoke up. "All right, who exactly called us?" "Officer, that would be me." I immediately raised my hand. My words dropped like a bomb. The hallway absolutely erupted into chaos. What the hell? Is he seriously trying to play the victim here? You just don't get it. In today's world, the guy in debt is the boss. That's why he's acting so high and mighty. I pointed straight at the fake cop in the doorway and yelled, "Officer, I have a financial dispute with these people out here." But neither of us actually called the cops. Yet this guy right here, somehow miraculously showed up on his own. And he didn't even ask either side about what was going on. He just straight up demanded that I open the door. He even threatened to arrest me if I didn't open it. So I have every reason to suspect that he's a fake cop. Hearing this, the group of officers instantly went on high alert, their hands instinctively reaching for the weapons on their belts. The older officer turned to the cop and demanded, "Comrade, which station are you with? What's your badge number? Show me your ID, right now." Hello, comrade. I'm an officer from the Shanchao police station. The name is Wang Jiajia, and you can verify my badge number right here." The cop pointed to the badge number on his chest, then quickly tried to explain. "I'm the community officer for the nearby neighborhood. I was just passing by and saw a big crowd gathering around. I was worried a riot might break out, so I came over to check things out." "Captain, the badge number checks out," a younger officer reported to the veteran cop after looking up the police database. The older officer looked back at me, and I put on my most innocent voice. "If I've falsely accused this officer, I'll accept any punishment you give me. Heck, you can even throw me in jail." The older officer thought it over for a second, then nodded, signaling me to go ahead and make the call. I put my phone on speaker, cranking the volume all the way up. The call went through almost immediately, and a woman's voice came from the other end. "Hello, Shanchao Police Station. How can I help you today?" "Hi there, Miss Officer. I called earlier asking about some household registration stuff. Officer Wang Jiajia told me to drop by sometime this week so he could help me process it." "Is he at the station right now?" "Yes, he is, but he's tied up with some work at the moment. I'd recommend coming by in about an hour." "Got it, thanks a lot, miss." As soon as I hung up, the younger officer immediately started making a call to verify. Meanwhile, I just stared at the fake cop, with a huge smirk on my face. In that fake cop's eyes, I must have looked like an absolute demon, grinning from ear to ear, fully baring my fangs. The younger officer slammed his phone down and instantly shoved the fake cop against the wall, slapping the cuffs right onto his wrists. The crowd of onlookers instantly erupted into whispers and gasps. "Whoa, a fake cop? No wonder the guy refused to open the door. How do you think he figured it out?" That police uniform looked totally real to me. I turned to the older officer and explained. He borrowed someone else's uniform, which is why there wasn't a single flaw in his appearance. But his law enforcement protocol was a total mess. I know that any real officer responding to a call would listen to both sides of the story first, before making any kind of judgment or fair ruling. "Oh, by the way, that Wang Jiajia guy who lent him the uniform is going to be dealt with too, right? Because I'll definitely be following up on this." The older officer nodded approvingly and gave me a compliment. "You've got some great safety awareness, kiddo." "Officer, there's one more thing. This imposter was actually called in by this mob over here. They're all accomplices." The officers immediately turned to glare at the crowd of debt collectors. It was obvious they were all in on it together. One of the collectors frantically tried to explain. "Officer, this family owes us over $1 million. Call it a loan if you want to be polite, but honestly, it's flat out fraud. We just came to collect our debt, and he dumped pee all over us. We were pushed to our limits, we had no other choice but to do this." "Officer, don't listen to their garbage. The second they showed up, they just started violently pounding on my door without even telling me what was going on. You can ask any of the neighbors here. Did they ever mention a single thing about a debt when they were smashing my door? Under those circumstances, how was I supposed to open the door? There's a whole gang of them, and it's just me. And I was just so terrified that I threw a basin of water at them. But now they're falsely accusing me of throwing pee. Mr. Officer, pee and water smell completely different, okay? You can smell it for yourselves. Where's the stench of piss on them? Instead, they splashed a massive amount of alcohol all over my windowsill. I suspect the moment you officers leave, they're gonna set fire to my house. As soon as I said that, the crowd of onlookers started buzzing again. Hey, he's right, those guys were the ones smashing the door from the very beginning. I live right next door. At first, they didn't even mention anything about collecting a debt. They were just banging on the door and swearing at him. This is clearly their fault. If you want your money back, just ask for it openly. Why act like a bunch of mafia thugs? If it were me, I wouldn't have opened the door either. They're acting like straight-up bandits. And they said he threw piss at them? What piss? All we saw was water, and the hallway doesn't smell like piss at all. At that moment, the older officer asked me, "Mind if I come inside to take a look?" Of course, I immediately opened the door to let the veteran cop inside. Seeing me open the door, the mob outside tried to rush in, but the group of officers blocked them right at the entrance. The older officer followed me to the windowsill and inspected it, confirming there were heavy traces of alcohol. After taking another close look, he spoke up. "You poured this alcohol yourself, didn't you?" I nodded readily, admitting to it. "Why would you do that?" I told the older officer exactly what I was planning. He stared at me in absolute disbelief. "Are you seriously going to do this?" I nodded. Whether they fell into the trap or not, that was completely up to them. The older officer and I walked back to the front door. The veteran cop took the lead and announced to the crowd, "All right, everyone quiet down. Since we're here today, we're going to get to the bottom of this. I've listened to both sides. One side claims there's a debt of 1 million, while the other side claims total ignorance. Since that's the case, let's have a representative from each side. I'll mediate for you. How does that sound? If that doesn't work, I'm taking every single one of you down to the station, and you can take your sweet time talking it out there." I immediately stated that I agreed to the mediation and would follow the officer's lead. That group of so-called creditors huddled up for a moment, and then agreed to mediate too. I made it clear that they could only send one representative into my house. There were way too many of them, and I couldn't argue with the whole mob by myself. So, the debt collectors picked out the middle-aged guy with the big beer belly to come inside. As soon as he sat down, I held my hand out toward him. "What's that supposed to mean?" the middle-aged man asked, totally baffled. "The IOUs. Did you guys really lend out money without having any written proof? Let's get one thing straight. If you have an IOU, I'll acknowledge it. But if you don't have it in writing, I'm not recognizing a single dime of it." The middle-aged man had clearly come prepared. He pulled 10 IOUs out of his pocket, and I took them to have a look. Perfect. Every single one stated a loan of 100,000. Excellent. This was just going to make them crash and burn that much faster. "All right, I accept them," I said without any hesitation. In my past life, I had completely broken down the second I saw those IOUs, crying and throwing a fit for hours. They had stared at me like I was some kind of ape in a circus. What a complete joke. Every single one of them had a faint, mocking sneer playing on their lips. "Huh?" The middle-aged man was completely taken aback by my words. "This is 1 million, not $100. You're just accepting it just like that?" "Yeah, exactly. The police are right here. I'm a law-abiding citizen, not some deadbeat." "Oh, well, how are you planning to pay it back then?" "Pay it off little by little? Tell me your exact repayment plan." The middle-aged man regained his composure and went back to acting all high and mighty. "Sell off the family assets first, obviously." "No way." The middle-aged man panicked the second he heard my idea. "Why not? Give me one good reason." Because it won't sell for much." The middle-aged man hastily made up a random excuse. I gave the man a hard look and enunciated every single word. "What the hell does that have to do with you? You little punk. Watch your language." The veteran police officer slammed his hand on the table and spoke sternly. "I brought you here for mediation, not to hurl insults like street thugs." Scolded by the police, the middle-aged man instantly dialed it back and behaved himself. "I'm selling my own family's stuff, that has nothing to do with you, right? If you don't want me to sell, fine. Then tear up all the debt notes. Why the hell would I tear up the debt notes? Because the stuff in the house is worth over 1 million. If I sell it, I'll have the money to pay you guys back. Could it be that you're not actually in a hurry for the money, and you want to do something to me instead? You're not trying to sell me off to Southeast Asia to harvest my kidneys, are you? Officer, if I ever go missing one day, it was definitely this gang who did it. Don't go making false accusations. The middle-aged man was getting completely flustered by my words. Then make your choice. Either you tear up the debt notes, or I sell the family assets. But you're not the one calling the shots in this house. Since I don't call the shots, then go find whoever does and make them pay you back. You, the middle-aged man, was clearly rendered speechless by my words again. Didn't Qin Shaolian say this son was a gullible idiot? How come he seemed sharper than attack? Right at that moment, my uncle pushed through the crowd and walked in. Seeing the middle-aged man, my uncle's eyes clearly flashed with guilt, but he quickly went back to looking normal. Qin Shi, what the hell is wrong with you? What are all these people doing outside? Why did you drag the police into our home? At this moment, the middle-aged man was frantically winking at my uncle, desperately signaling him to shut up. But my uncle completely misunderstood, thinking the man wanted him to talk as much as possible. You really are completely out of control. Today, I'm going to teach you exactly who calls the shots in this house. I pointed right at my uncle and said to the middle-aged man, he's the one who calls the shots around here. Go ask him for the money. Officer, you heard him just now. He said he's the one calling the shots in this family. After saying that, I turned to ask my uncle, did the certificates come through? My uncle pulled 3 pieces of paper from his pocket. I took a quick glance, and sure enough, they were death certificates for 3 people. Looks like my parents went to incredible lengths to fake their own deaths. They are absolutely dead set on shipping me off to work on a fishing boat. Just thinking about this, I reached out and tightly grabbed my uncle's hands. Congratulations, uncle, you have successfully inherited my dad's estate, along with the 1 million in debt notes. Have a seat and take your time discussing the repayment plan with the creditor's representative. Get the hell out of here. A son pays off his father's debts. I have absolutely no obligation to pay your debts for you. It was only then that my uncle finally realized I had walked him right into a trap. I gave the veteran police officer a look, signaling that I needed to step outside for a bit. The veteran officer walked over to the door, found a young police officer, and whispered a few words into his ear. Uncle, Mr. Creditor, I'm heading out to take care of something. In order to pay off the debt, I need to go to the bank and withdraw the cash from my card. Seeing me about to leave, my uncle hastily stopped me. Don't make it so complicated. How much money do you have on your card? I'll transfer it straight to the creditors. After saying that, he even raised an eyebrow at the middle-aged man. At that moment, the middle-aged man just wanted to facepalm. He realized this uncle knew absolutely nothing about his own nephew. I looked straight at my uncle and said, I have 1,050,000 on my card. Uncle, you transfer 50,000 to me, and send the remaining 1 million straight to the creditors. Then we're even with the creditors, and you can hand over all the IOUs to me. Get out, go to the bank and withdraw the money yourself. I jogged back to my room, packed my bag, and headed out. The young police officer drove me to the police station in the bank. When I returned, my uncle and the middle-aged man were just awkwardly staring at each other. What took you so long? My uncle asked impatiently, crossing his arms. Oh, I stopped by the police station first. Hearing that, a sudden sense of dread washed over my uncle. Why on earth would you go to the police station? I pulled out a brand new family register, waved it in his face, and said, to cancel their registrations. My parents and my little brother are dead, so naturally, I had to cancel their household registrations. I thought the old book was bad luck, so I just got a new one. Look, uncle, I'm the head of the household now. Upon hearing that, my uncle's jaw practically dropped to the floor. You little bastard, how dare you? Watch your mouth, you old bastard. This is my house. Since when is it your place to lecture me? If you keep trying to play the elder and lecture me, I'll lead that mob of creditors outside straight to your house. The police are still right here, you know. Dropping my previous polite and fake act, I yelled right back at him. You've got some damn nerve. I told the debt collectors at the door to drag my uncle out. At first, they completely ignored me, so I turned straight to the middle-aged man and said, if he doesn't leave, we have nothing to talk about. Worst case scenario, you guys can just go ahead and sue me. But let me tell you, suing requires evidence. Do you even have all the solid proof you need? The middle-aged man shot a glare at my uncle. My uncle glared back at me, stomped off to the front door in a huff, and started making phone calls again. Needless to say, he was still calling my dad. Xinlong investment. Things seemed to be slipping right out of my parents' control, rapidly hurtling toward the edge of total chaos. How much money did you withdraw from the bank? Nothing. Nothing? Then what the hell did you go to the bank for? The bank wouldn't let me withdraw anything. They said I still owe a $6 annual fee. The middle-aged man was just about to lose his temper, but thinking about the message my dad had sent earlier, he forcefully swallowed his anger. Can we start selling off the family assets now? It's getting late. I checked the sky. It was indeed getting a bit late. So I nodded. What do you want to sell? The middle-aged man asked. How about the entire set of mahogany furniture? What's the current market value? 100,000, I declared with absolute arrogance. The middle-aged man sent out a text message, and it wasn't long before he got a reply. After taking a quick look, he announced that he would buy it himself, using the iOS to directly offset the cost. I exchanged a look with the older police officer and immediately agreed. I took one of the iOS and casually handed it over to the veteran cop. After that, I sold every single thing in the house that was worth anything. At first, the middle-aged guy was still playing it cool, constantly pulling out iOS to offset the costs. Pretty soon, I had sold off almost everything we owned, and I had bought back every last one of those iOS. I figured it out anyway. My dad must have made a secret deal with them. They could let the debt slide, but they absolutely had to secure all the furniture and valuables. Otherwise, when they eventually came back to a house emptier than a concrete shell, they wouldn't even be able to live there. My uncle stood by the door, watching everything unfold, absolutely seething with anger. I pretended not to notice him and turned to the middle-aged guy. Now that the debt is cleared, you guys can pack up and leave. Leave? Why would we leave? The guy looked completely baffled by what I said. It's not really appropriate to keep all your stuff in my house, is it? But hey, you don't have to move. Just pay me rent. This place is $10,000 a month. 3 months up front, plus a 1-month deposit. $10,000 a month? Why don't you just rob a bank? The guy roared. Then pack up your junk. I stared at him, deadpan. Right then, my uncle finally stepped back in, trying to play the peacemaker. Let me just say something fair here. I cut him right off, not holding back at all. Shut your mouth. What goes on in my house is none of your damn business. Either you pay off the money for me, and I'll let you keep all this stuff here as long as you want. Or you don't pay up, and you just shut the hell up. After huddling up with the other debt collectors outside, the guy finally agreed to move their stuff out. They were hauling things in and out of the house, sweating like pigs. Meanwhile, I just sat off to the side, legs crossed, tossing out sarcastic remarks. Acting so smug I could have given them a heart attack. Before long, the box truck the guy had called in was completely packed by his crew. Leaving my house completely stripped bare. The box truck finally drove off, but no one noticed the police cruiser quietly tailing right behind it. Out by the door, the nosy neighbors were huddled in small groups, gossiping about the drama. And that gang of debt collectors just stood there exhausted, hands on their knees, gasping for air. I could easily guess they were all silently cursing my dad out in their heads. But that was just the warm-up. Get ready to face the music, boys. I exchanged a glance with the veteran cop, and he gave me a firm nod. So, I turned to him and yelled out, "Officer, I'd like to report a crime. These people are forging iOS. This is extortion, and we are talking about a massive amount of money." What? The whole crowd at the door gasped in shock. I pointed straight at the breathless debt collectors. It's them. They're faking these iOS. Dropping all pretense, the middle-aged guy lunged forward, pointing his finger right at my face and cursing. "You little punk, watch your damn mouth. Who the hell are you calling extortionists?" My uncle immediately chimed in to back him up. "This kid's had a few screws loose since he was little. Don't take him seriously." I completely ignored my uncle, walked right up to the veteran cop, and grabbed a stack of iOS. The proof is sitting right here in these iOS. All it takes is one lab test, and we'll know exactly when the ink hit this paper. I flipped through the iOS, one by one, keeping that mocking smirk in my voice. These iOS, the date of the loan written on them is exactly 1 year ago today. But exactly 1 year ago today, my parents were traveling in Europe with my little brother. So how exactly did my dad borrow money from you? Did you all fly out to Europe to give it to him? At this point, the creditors' faces turned completely pale. It took a long time for the middle-aged man to choke out a response. Your dad borrowed the money from us before he went to Europe. He just wrote the IOS after he got back, so the date was just a simple mistake. Oh, so he borrowed it before the trip? Then how exactly did you get the money to my dad? In cash, the middle-aged man blurted out what he thought was the perfect excuse. These days, handing over cash is still the safest bet. Did all of you give him cash? I looked out at the group of creditors by the door, and they all nodded in agreement. And this was exactly the moment I had been waiting for. Now, their charges were absolutely locked in. Officer, please check their bank statements. I just told you, I gave him cash. Obviously, there wouldn't be any bank transfer records for cash. I looked at the middle-aged man with complete pity, and said slowly, No, I mean checking your cash withdrawal records. It was only then that the middle-aged man realized the trap I had deliberately set for him. And they had all jumped right in like utter fools. I patted the middle-aged man on the shoulder, and whispered, It's true that cash is hard to trace. But the biggest problem with cash is that you can't explain where you got it from. The veteran officer waved his hand, and the police outside immediately moved in, slapping handcuffs on the entire group of so-called creditors. My uncle was jumping up and down in a complete panic, screaming at me for being an ungrateful brat. I turned to the police and said, Officer, I highly suspect that my uncle is in on this with them. Why else would an uncle take the side of total strangers over his own nephew? The moment he heard my accusation, my uncle snapped his mouth shut. Though his eyes were burning with sheer resentment, the creditors were finally shoved into the police cars. But before getting in, the middle-aged man kicked up a fuss, demanding to speak to me one last time. I didn't want to make things difficult for the officers, so I walked over and stood right in front of him, looking perfectly innocent. The middle-aged man asked the one question that had been eating at him. You knew right from the very beginning that the IOS were fake, didn't you? I just nodded. Seeing me admit it, the man looked even more confused. Then why the hell didn't you say something right away? I leaned in close to his ear, and whispered softly. If I had said something back then, it would have just been attempted fraud. You could have brushed it off as a joke and gotten a few days in lockup at most. But saying it now makes it a completed fraud. And considering the massive amount of money and the fact that you're a criminal gang, you could be facing the death penalty. With that, I turned my back on him and walked back toward the house without a single glance back. Behind me, the middle-aged man began screaming and cursing my dad like a total maniac. I stopped halfway and paused, as if I had suddenly remembered something. I called out to one of the officers, Please make sure they face a strict trial, to uphold the absolute justice of the law. I stepped back inside the house. Now, there were only 3 of us left in the room. Me, my uncle, and the veteran officer. Are you finally happy now? My uncle snapped, pointing an angry finger right at my face. Oh, it's not over yet. None of you are getting away. I looked dead at my uncle and let out a cold, mocking laugh. Remembering how all the hell I went through in my past life started because of him. I reminded myself that this old bastard was the most venomous one of all. When the old junk collector showed up at my place and started ripping up the floorboards and water pipes, my uncle completely lost his mind. Stop it, I said. Stop, my uncle screamed, stomping around the house in an absolute panic. Seeing that yelling wasn't working, he actually threw himself onto the floor, throwing a full-blown toddler tantrum. Why are you doing this? I asked. It's my own house. I can do whatever I want with it. If you really love this place so much, how about I move into your house, and your whole family can move in here? Bull crap, who wants to swap houses with a little brat like you? This house is mine. Perfect. He took the bait. Just because you say it's yours, makes it yours? Yeah right, and I might as well say the White House belongs to me. HMPH, I have the property deed. With that, my uncle scrambled up and yanked the property deed right out of his bag. The old cop stepped up, took the deed, and quickly flipped through it. A moment later, he gave his verdict. The deed is real. My uncle shot me a triumphant smirk. The deed was supposed to be his absolute last resort, but he was forced to play his trump card early. I just let out a simple "oh," and waved at the old junk collector to keep ripping up the floor. How dare you? My uncle roared, completely losing his temper. Why wouldn't I dare? Besides, the deed only proves who owns the building itself. The floorboards and the pipes inside, well, those belong to me. In the end, despite my uncle's furious, helpless screaming, my place was stripped bare. The old man even yanked out the electrical wiring straight from the walls. Of course, I did leave exactly two things behind: the toilet and the bathroom sink. Staring at the empty shell of a house, now even barer than a construction site, my uncle looked completely traumatized. Did my dad's plan have a massive flaw right from the very beginning? We had run through every possible scenario, yet absolutely none of this was going according to plan. But I didn't have time to worry about my uncle's mental breakdown. I reached right into my own bag, pulled out a property deed, and handed it to the old cop. The old cop took one look and completely froze. My deed was real too. One single house, two separate property deeds, and both of them were completely authentic. How the hell was that possible? Was this some kind of twisted magic trick? My uncle quickly suggested we go to a real estate agency to verify it, claiming he just so happened to know an agent. But I turned straight to the old cop and said, I don't trust any agents. I'd rather trust the official housing bureau. So, the old cop packed us both into his cruiser, and drove us straight back to the police station. Just before we left, I made sure to loudly ask my neighbors to keep an eye on the place while I was gone. Don't let any shady characters sneak in and steal anything, I yelled. The neighbors nodded and politely agreed, but I knew exactly what they were thinking. Any burglar stupid enough to break into my house would be fresh out of luck. The only things left were a decade-old toilet and a rusty sink. Back at the station, the old cop explained the bizarre situation to the room. The entire precinct was left completely speechless. Even the police chief himself rushed over to see what was going on. They had no choice. The case was just too massive. There was no way the district precinct could handle this on their own. Don't underestimate the severity of two real deeds for one house. If they messed this up, the entire country's real estate market would completely collapse. Seriously, who would ever dare spend their life savings on a house that might not even belong to them? Eventually, the case was bumped all the way up to the provincial level. They even dispatched special commissioners just to oversee the investigation. The local cops didn't just sit around either. They called in several top experts to examine the two deeds. And their conclusion? The documents, the watermarks, the steel seals. Both of them were 100% authentic. For a long moment, a dead silence fell over the entire police station. I laid out my theory. Officer, is it possible that my uncle has an inside man at the housing bureau? The deed and the official seal might be real, but the transfer process was totally illegal. The officers listened, and it actually made sense to them. The chief handed me a boxed lunch, gesturing for me to keep talking while I ate. Signatures. My original deed has the names of all 4 of my family members on it. If there was a transfer of ownership, they would absolutely need my signature. All we have to do is go to the housing bureau and check the signatures on the documents submitted for the transfer. And so, a whole crew of housing bureau staff was dragged back to work in the middle of the night. Saying they weren't pissed off would be a lie, but the inspector sent down from the provincial level was even more furious than they were. In the end, they found the proof. On the transaction documents, my signature had been forged. The staff member who processed the transfer was immediately taken away for investigation. As for my uncle's property deed, since it was illegally obtained, it was destroyed right there on the spot. To make up for their massive screw-up, the housing bureau asked me what kind of compensation I wanted. I told them I just wanted a new deed. Then, I pulled those 3 death certificates out of my pocket. Just a few minutes later, I was handed a brand new property deed. And it only had one name on it, mine. The bureau staff told my uncle that he needed to sign some related paperwork. After signing his name with a face full of bitter resentment, my uncle thought he could finally go home. Everyone just took one look at it, and then my uncle was slapped with handcuffs. He was the one who had forged my signature. Did you know everything all along? That was the last question my uncle asked me before he was dragged away. I smiled and nodded, and even told him, not only did I cancel my parents' and brother's household registrations, but I also went ahead and froze all their bank accounts. In 1 month, all the money in their accounts will automatically be transferred to mine. Uncle, those death certificates you gave me really came in handy. Tomorrow, I'm listing the house for sale. As long as the price is low enough, someone will definitely pay in cash on the spot. What do you think Qin Shaolian will do when he comes back and realizes he has absolutely nothing left? If I were him, I'd go running straight to you. Besides, you'll be rotting in prison by then, and your house just happens to have 2 empty rooms. My dad can just share 1 room, while my brother Chin Chuan sleeps in the other room with your daughter. By the time you get out of jail, you'll probably have a brand new nephew, and your daughter will have given you a grandson. Sure, that grandson might be the product of inbreeding, but hey, becoming a grandpa right out of prison is still something worth celebrating, right? As for my mom, knowing how twisted my dad and brother are, they'll definitely end up selling her to a fishing boat. With my uncle's endless curses echoing behind me, I walked right out of the housing bureau. The very next day, I sold the house for 30% off the market price. I rented a stall at the local market and started selling all kinds of seafood. My past life of endless fishing had given me deep knowledge of the seafood trade. We didn't have much else on those boats, but we always had more than enough seafood to eat. I knew exactly which catches were actually delicious, and which ones were just overpriced garbage. Plus, after spending years hustling at the docks, I knew the wholesale and retail prices like the back of my hand. It didn't take long for my business to absolutely take off. Once the money started rolling in, I began making even more investments. Having the insider knowledge of 2 lifetimes gave me an advantage that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. And as for my parents and Chin Chuan, they completely vanished without a trace. It's a real shame, my revenge isn't finished yet. It was another New Year's Eve, and the heavy snow was still falling. I was bundled up in thick layers, standing by the side of the road, setting off fireworks one after another. Just then, a man in ragged clothes walked toward me. His face looked somewhat similar to mine. He lowered his head and hurried past me. "Chin Chuan?" I called out instinctively. He turned around, and when he saw it was me, a deeply conflicted look crossed his face. Inside a cheap public bathhouse that stayed open even on New Year's Eve. It seemed the owner was a lonely soul himself. After his shower, Chin Chuan was wolfing down a bowl of noodles. "Bro, where have you been? We've been looking for you all these years." I didn't answer him. Instead, I asked, "Where are Mom and Dad?" Chin Chuan stopped eating. The light in his eyes instantly dimmed. Mom couldn't handle the life we were living. She ran off with someone else. Dad is still living under the bridge. He caught a cold today, so I came out to find some food for him. Following Chin Chuan's directions, I drove over and found Chin Shaolian. He was wearing a filthy, blackened hat, wrapped in newspapers, shivering violently under the bridge. Seeing a Mercedes pull up in front of him, he thought it was just another drunk coming to mess with him, and instinctively shrank further back into the shadows. But when the window slowly rolled down and he saw that I was the driver, a wave of absolute shock and joy washed over his face. Just like Chin Chuan, Chin Shaolian inhaled his bowl of noodles desperately. It was obvious he hadn't had a full meal in ages. Chin Chuan finally seemed to catch his breath, and asked softly, "Bro, why did you sell our house?" I feigned surprise. "I didn't sell it. Wasn't the house under Uncle's name? He kicked me out of the house and sold it behind our backs. He even told me you guys died in a car crash. Then he took our family registry, went to the police station in the bank, and completely canceled your identities and bank accounts." I spun the lie without batting an eye. Hearing this, Chin Shaolian slammed his hand on the table in a blind rage. I was so completely blind back then. What kind of people was I even mixed up with? They took my money, milked me dry, and then vanished into thin air, every single one of them. I know about that. That whole crew got slapped with massive prison sentences. Impersonating police officers, felony. Organized fraud, felony. Insider collusion and forging property deeds, another huge felony. The absolute lightest sentence they got was 12 years. Right now, they're probably rotting in prison, working those sewing machines to the bone. I pretended to be clueless, looked at Chin Shaolian, and asked, "What exactly happened to you guys back then?" Chin Shaolin's mind seemed to drift back to those days. We were on a trip to Sioux City, when suddenly, out of nowhere, we were told our IDs and bank cards were completely invalid. Even our phone lines got cut off. We desperately wanted to head back, but without any IDs, we couldn't even buy train tickets. And with our bank cards dead, our mobile payments were frozen too. We couldn't even rent a damn bike. In the end, all we had was the little cash in our pockets. We had to walk all the way back from Sioux City. When we finally made it home, we saw the house was being remodeled. The workers told us it had already been sold. We went to the police station. They said our household registrations and IDs were completely wiped out. We aren't even citizens of this country anymore. Without IDs, we couldn't even find the most basic jobs. We had to survive by begging on the streets. Your mother couldn't handle the reality of it all. and ran off with another man. Forget it, just stay here for the next few days. There is food, drinks, and you can take a hot shower. Once the 5th day of the new year passes, I will come pick you up and find you a job. Qin Shaolian and Qin Chuan exchanged a look, then both turned to look at Qin Shi. Son, bro, thank you so much for still thinking about us. Do not worry about it, I help where I can. I left a few $1,000 at the front desk for you guys. Whatever you want to eat or drink, just go ahead and grab it yourselves. After saying that, I left the bathhouse. Qin Shaolian and Qin Chuan hugged each other, crying their eyes out. The 6th day of the Lunar New Year. The weather was beautiful, with a gentle breeze and bright sunshine. It was a perfect day to head out to sea. I drove my car, taking Qin Shaolian and Qin Chuan down to the docks. Since you do not have IDs, working on the cargo ships is your only option right now. I already put in a good word with the captain. It is base pay plus commission, and they will hand the cash directly to you every single month. Work when you have the energy, and rest in the cabin when you do not. No one is going to give you a hard time. The conditions on the boat are a bit rough, so just tough it out for a while. Once I pull some strings, I will get your IDs sorted out. After saying that, I gave the captain a subtle nod. The captain pulled the two of them aboard, showed them where the cabin was, and sent them down to rest. Qin Shaolian and Qin Chuan looked at me with absolute gratitude in their eyes. I just waved my hand, and said casually, "Get some good rest, you need to build your strength up so you can make more money." As the two of them went down into the cabin, the captain walked over and handed me a cigarette. "Just these two? Yeah, are two not enough? You are absolutely ruthless, man. You literally sell them off to Southeast Asia, and they still thank you from the bottom of their hearts." I looked up at the clear blue sky, exhaled a puff of smoke, and spoke in a freezing cold tone.